Hello, everybody. Welcome to Progressive Democrats of America Town Hall for August 3rd, 2025. And my best friend growing up and I both have birthdays in this week. We're in the day that's in between the two of them. Mine has not happened yet. So the first week of August is very important to me every year. And great for all of you to be here. Obviously, we're in the so-called dog days of summer in the Northern Hemisphere, the North American continent. And depending on where you are in the country, you might be experiencing overwhelming, suffocating heat, maybe a little less than a few days ago. But that, of course, is something that should be seen, and the increasing um, just levels of temperatures and heat waves sometimes happening in winter these days, certainly in spring and fall, and then they're devastating during the summer, is a political issue. But it that has not risen to be a major top political subject so far in the summer of 2025. I know it was regionally for about a week recently, but there's so much going on in the chaos of the world and the horror in Gaza and the crisis that does seem to be impacting Donald Trump's standing even with his base and the attacks, of course, on the constitutional republic by the Trump administration that are unprecedented in my lifetime, and I think all of our lifetimes. And not that there wasn't an American right that was always angling to get some of this done, over the recent decades, but they've never succeeded in it. And of course, that's unfolding. So these are crazy days, and there's so much to talk about. And I'm actually really excited that we have Saru Jayaraman from One Fair Wage as our featured guest because even with all the craziness around the Epstein scandal and the attack on the constitutional republic, the one thing that even has greater impact on the standing of politicians and political movements is the state of the U.S. economy. And of course, it's now proving 7 months into the Trump administration that his promise to be able to tackle inflation, to have economic stability and a clearly more prosperous economy than when he picked up, he has failed to do that. And it's a big issue. How much is that, or something like the Epstein scandal, that is a core reason that his public opinion polls are dropping? And when his poll numbers drop, then we get into a sort of a different territory, I think, than we were, say, a few weeks ago when his poll numbers were not high, but they were not free falling. This debate within the Democratic Party between the moderate wing, which doesn't want to have it and present the Democratic Party in 2026 as having, distinctly progressive and altered policy positions than they've had in previous elections when the mainstream has dominated the party, or is the thing to still make sure that the Democratic Party is shifting to really address the core economic issues of our time. And I think One Fair Wage and Saru's work is at the heart of that in a very tangible, hands-on way with the various campaigns that they lead across the country, and they have great impact. And of course, they famously have a very great name of their organization that very, very clearly defines what those campaigns are about. And it's about the proposition, and this is central to PDA's economic policies. It's almost a core economic principle at the top of the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights that we promote, which is that anybody in America who works a full-time job, whether it's the private sector or the public sector, that job should be commensurate to, extrapolated over a year to a living wage with, of course, benefits as well, so that the person can lead a good life, which has not been the circumstance for the American working class. And so I'm really, really happy to uh, have Saru join us today and to talk about their campaigns, and also probably get some of her wisdom and her reflections on these other crises that are so making this such a crazy time to live through. Um, Now, last week at the end of the show, we had a great show, and we had Hartzell Gray as our featured guest in the first hour. And of course, Hartzell's the national coordinator of Young Progressive Democrats, and he announced, we were very honored to have him announce his campaign for Congress on the call. And we tried, because we just don't want to not address these things on these town halls, to talk about Gaza and the Epstein scandal in the second hour. And um, we, of course, probably maybe next week we'll pick up more about Gaza and what's going on there, which is still a nightmare. We've seen obviously a break there in some of the um, prominent Americans, say liberals or centrist Democrats, along with liberal centrist heads of states from across the world, have changed their tone about Gaza. And they're not where we are on the subject, and or where allied organizations and the peace movement have been for pretty much within days after October 7th, recognizing atrocities, recognizing crimes against humanity, recognizing genocide. And when you recognize those things, it's a moral demand that you intervene to do everything you can to try to bring it to a halt. And of course, the activism has been more muted in the United States because the Trump administration has explicitly threatened the people who speak out about Palestine with real life McCarthyite threats and worse, and trying to suffocate that discourse in the United States. And so we do need to turn to that in the coming weeks about how we approach that in this context. However, I do want to say as my opening remarks, and then we'll go to Donna if she's with us, and Mike Fox for PDA to do's, and then I'll introduce Mike Olis, PDA's Chief of Staff, to introduce Saru as our featured guest and to have a conversation going about one fair wage, their campaigns, and as I said, how PDA and one fair wage obviously match up as it will be a great partnership, has been and will continue to be, and we can talk about how that can operate. But about Epstein, I really just had this observation I wanted to share with people to build upon what I said last week. And what I said last week, I think, is um, again, James Carville, I saw is who earlier on when Trump won, he was one of these guys who said the Democratic Party should just sit on its hands, do nothing because they'll win the midterms. Now he's taking the opposite tone. He's the guy's a big political fighter. He's obviously a highly centrist Democrat. Don't agree with him on much, but now he sees blood in the water and he's like, got to fight, 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 fight. And particularly on Trump is wounded, let's go after him. Let's not sit on the sidelines. Let's make sure this really wounds him and defeats him. And here's the thing, I understand the sentiment that Trump has had so many scandals, and to focus on the scandal component of the Donald Trump phenomenon has been a very, very losing proposition for the Democratic Party. Is this different? And I think it should be. It is a level of disgust about the crimes that are front and center on this. I think there's again a moral requirement to speak out in support of the victims, to make sure that their voices and the whole way in which, especially exploitation and harassment of women, was looked like only 4, 5, 6 years ago that our society was finally going to make significant progress on this front. And of course, we've had a huge reaction. The mainstream media has sort of embraced the reaction with Trump's victory to not address issues like the sexism and sexual harassment in the forthright way that was happening a few years ago. And of course, that's tragic. We cannot allow that to happen. We have to make sure we anchor in support on that front. Trump, though, I do think this is seriously wounding him. I am not a scholar or a political activist who focuses on the discourse inside the American right wing. But one thing that I heard somebody say, and as to why this may really undermine Trump, I mean, obviously it should. I did not know the degree to which he was integrated into Epstein's operations. And it's terrifying to see this stuff come out because it's terrifying what was transpiring. But in the American right wing and across much of conservative leaning Americans, there's a real focus on the welfare of children. And to see Trump be booed when his image came up, it was intentionally, the audience was asked to direct their attention to the screen at this football stadium at a WWE event. His image came up signing some executive order in just a cacophony of boos at WWE. And where it goes from here, I think we continue to do what we always do, progressive politics, but also take a moral position. I don't think it should be the central focus of PDA's work, but we have to make sure that that kind of voice in PDA has that kind of voice on the sorry, interesting note in the chat. Yeah, I think that's what we have to continue to do. And we have to just sort of read the news and see if there's a way and keep on top of things. And all of you out there, the total national family of PDA, if you have constructive suggestions on how we can lean into this to make sure our voices are heard, and that just how repugnant what this is, that justice has to be held to, and of course, I mean, Donald Trump, um, obviously, with this history, with the Supreme Court ruling about anything he does while it's official business, it's not criminal. Obviously, I think the guy in a just world would be impeached once this information comes out automatically. Is it heading that way? We know it's not, but we have to, on the one hand, make sure this all adds up to a massive victory in the midterm elections in 2026. And we also have to make sure the Democratic Party continues to move in the progressive direction in terms of public policy for the welfare of the people of the country and the world. Well, that's my thoughts for today. We can pick it up later in the second hour. People want to chime in. We'll be talking about money and politics in the second hour. And we'll be joined by Saru Jayaraman in about 5 minutes from One Fair Wage. Mike Fox with our PDA to-dos. Take it away.
Alan, did you want to toss to Donna first? She is with us, or do you just want me to go?
Why don't you go, and then I'll come back to me and we'll introduce Donna, and then yeah.
Rocking. All right. So, welcome, everyone. Our to-dos list is what I'm all about. So, to-do number one, as always, every week, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. This call is all about hanging out with people who get it. So please revel in that fact. Feel better about that fact. This call is designed to do several things: to educate, to organize and get folks cooking, and likewise to uplift. Okay, so if you'd be so kind, gang, keep your comments as positive as possible into the chat. We know that there's just a mess going on right now. The good news is we got us making a difference. Okay, so that's, we try to stay as positive as Donna's podcast suggests, positively progressive. Okay, and show solidarity with each other in the chat. Before you start typing, imagine to yourself, how is this pushing the movement forward? How is this inspiring others? Okay, and so with that in mind, you likewise are able to instant message people in our chat. So if you see somebody, ping them, say how do, just build a little bit of solidarity that way. Okay, and while we're on the chat, it will be shut down while our featured guest is speaking, so that we can all stay focused on what she has to say. Okay, and let's try to keep our comments in the chat on topic. All right, it's real easy for us to go off in 117 different directions, and the chat, while it should be a tool for us, can just turn into chaos. Right? Okay, so your help in that regard is greatly appreciated. So to do number one, revel. To do number two, take notes. We got an awful lot of good information coming at you here, not only to fill your head up, but likewise to share with others, and ways that we're all organizing. Okay, so we want to make sure everybody leaves this call with a firm vision of what they're going to be doing over the upcoming week. Okay, and I'll be tossing into the chat a link to our weekly to-do list. Okay, so keep your eyeballs peeled on that. Now, to-do number three is time, and then number four is treasure. All right, that's kind of the way, the core way that we make things happen, right? Time, treasure, or both. So from a time standpoint, number one ask, and I'll keep this tight on the to-do list, it's longer substantially, but number one to do is hit the phones, hit the phones, hit the phones, hit the phones. Did I mention phone bank? Okay, we got to have our phones on fire, not only for elections that are taking place right now, not only to push people out to events that are taking place right now, and likewise pushing folks out to calls like this, so that we all know what day and what time we got to get together and make things happen. Okay, so we need phone bankers like nobody's business. If you are a phone banker, type in the chat, let us know. Let folks know that they need to join you, okay? And go to pdamerica.org/volunteer. And that link will be getting dropped in the chat, but if you don't see it, just go to pdamerica.org. Tabs right there. Boom, volunteer. Toss in an hour. That's all we're asking for, just an hour. We will spend more than an hour on this call today. So everybody's got an hour. So let's just focus an hour on making things happen. Okay. And then, so that's the main time ask, others on the to-do list. And then from a treasure standpoint, we don't have a specific dollar amount today that we're trying to raise. And let me underline, the vast majority of our work gets done by volunteer labor, and we take great pride in that fact. Okay. However, we got to keep the lights on. And so what we're looking for is solidarity here. Okay. Even just a dollar. You can toss $1 in. Beautiful. If you can put 10 in, great. You can put 100 in. Wonderful. The amount isn't the primary goal here. Primary goal is all of us pitching in together as a team here, okay? And I'll be back at the top of the hour to see where we're at on those goals. Keep your eyeballs peeled on the chat for those links. And back to you, Alan.
So much. And just yesterday, I was honored to be on another allied organization of PDA, One Payer States National Conference. And Donna and I were on together at noon yesterday as part of their national the national panels that went out over Zoom, and also were available for the people who were collected in Denver, Colorado. So great to see you again today, Donna. Let's unmute Donna and bring her forward.
I believe she's co-hosted. Let me double check.
You know, of course, in time too, I'd love to hear Donna's reflections on, we worked a lot at PDA with so many activists around sexual harassment in the workplace. It's just appalling to see, the incredible focus that the world and the country had on those issues, and then appalling to see the cultural, and right-wing appalling reaction to it.
Alan.
Hey, there you are, Donna.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Thanks, Mike, for getting me co-hosted. I'm not going to be here a long time today because, as many of you know, my husband Larry had hip surgery on Thursday, and he's recovering at home. And it's been a weekend, and we're taking care of each other like we always do. But it becomes very clear to me once again that our healthcare system really needs some work. We all know that in years past, patients, when they were discharged from the hospital, were discharged because it was medically appropriate for them to go. Now it's most often fiscally appropriate for them to go a little bit earlier, I think, than most are ready to go. And certainly if they're going to a home where they've got a 70-year-old caregiver who may not be able to, do all the things that a 6-foot-tall man needs done when he's not feeling well. So anyway, good vibes, put out some good vibes for us. We're doing okay. First shower's been done. We've gotten through all that fun stuff. So anyway, and you'll be happy to know they got their copay before they put one little bit of effort into the man. So, and they wanted to make sure they had their copay first. So, Alan, thank you for doing the One Payer States call yesterday. Many of you may have been part of One Payer States, and I know I see a few people on the call. One Payer States actually was formed with by PDA in Wayne, Pennsylvania in 2010 to bring together states that were working on single payer healthcare for all. And it's been going all these years. Very happy that it has. Chuck Panacchio is one of the leaders in that group, and PDA has continued to have a lot of influence in the group, which is great. So I'm really, really thrilled that Alan and I both got to be a part of that day in Denver. I couldn't be there in person. And finally, be watching for Positively Progressive. It'll be fun. Alan will get that snippet from me this week, and we'll have a new episode up for everyone. And we'll start looking at some of the things that PDA did over these 21 years now of our operation to make sure it did become a 2 decades long progressive movement. And we are, as I saw one comment in the chat, unabashedly, positively progressive. That's us. We're going to keep working this and trying to make it right. We owe our children that. We owe our grandchildren that. They have every right to have the level of hope that we had when we went into our adult lives. And we need to make sure that we help provide that platform for them to leap off of. So thanks very much, Alan, and I'll see you all next week.
Thank you so much, Don. Great being with you yesterday. And let's talk over the week about how we we almost had a special town hall, possibly would have been this week, where a feminist filmmaker was going to play a film called Brainwashed, a great film, as we were going to have a structure that was unique for the town hall, but we were going to have an organization, a national organization, a 501c3, that organizes to defend women who were experiencing sexual exploitation. And the young volunteers had reached out to us about this with the filmmaker who I know. Actually, she brought it to PDA. And then what happened is, and this goes again to the political climate and all that One Fair Wage does, and Saru does, and PDA does, their organization, they pulled out of it because, and Mike Box knows about this. We were trying to set it up with a kind of unique structure. It would be like the second hour of the town hall. The filmmaker and the women from the organization were going to join us. Then we were just going to break for 100 minutes while people went and watched the film, as opposed to on Zoom. And people should check it out. It's by filmmaker Nina Menkes, called Brainwashed. It has its own backstory about why the corporate film industry can act all the way through the production to it going to the con, getting great reviews, that they love the film. And guess what? Hollywood, there was a rebellion against it because there was a critique about sexism in the films that you watch and how that builds towards the mindset of, sexualizing women and sexual harassment in the workplace, etc. Great film, Brainwashed. But the organization wouldn't let them appear on our call for fear of being attacked politically.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. That's the world we live in right now. That's the
What a climate we're in right now, right? So we all got to fight that. We all have to fight that. And I think everybody who's on this call on a Sunday is fighting that. And I appreciate all the work people do, phone banking and raising funds and working for candidates. And there couldn't be anything more pertinent, right, than what people make and making a fair wage for the work that they do. I mean, if you just ask people, as I did, that I know not all patient family members are so interested in what people are earning around them hourly, but I am, because some of the worst jobs that take place in the healthcare industry are the lowest paying, just like they are outside of the healthcare industry. But it's sad to see people doing some work which is really difficult, really, and getting paid so poorly, when you know that, one of the things that I wanted to say something and didn't, and this is just one example. There's just one anesthesiologist now supervising 5 operating rooms with nurse anesthetists with your patient. So see, now they only need to pay one big dollar value to one doctor anesthesiologist, a specialist anesthesiologist, while 5 nurse anesthetists are under them. So it's a 5-to-1 ratio. And I don't know that I'm all that comfortable with that when it's somebody I love, so, right? I mean, she reassured me that everything would be safe. It's all good. And I think, I sort of would like I don't know. Anyway, it's just one of those examples of how we find in this society, with so much emphasis on money making, that we have this gradient, and it goes all the way down in that hospital to the person who's cleaning the toilets on the first floor where everybody comes in the door. And it just bothers me when I find out people are paid so poorly, when I know how much money is flowing into the operation. So anyway, I can't wait to listen to this later. And thanks, Alan.
Thank you so much, Donna. And indeed, with what Donna was saying, and I'm going to toss to Mike Olis, who will introduce Saru, a great friend of PDA's, who is a featured speaker at a Progressive Central in Chicago. I'm holding up her book, One Fair Wage. And just really one of the most exceptional American activists, organizers in the country, and one of the great ones in the whole world. And we are absolutely thrilled to have our featured guest. But Mike Olis is going to introduce. Welcome, Mike, Chief of Staff of Progressive Democrats of America.
Hey, Alan. Hey, PDA Land, PDA Nation. How's it going today? I'm actually at my kitchen table here in Indianapolis, Indiana. very busy day already for activism, and so excited to sort of end my work day with a conversation with Saru Jayaraman with One Fair Wage and the broader Living Wage for All movement. Saru and I met several years ago, and I was with Saru in Chicago a little bit over 2 years ago when Chicago passed the One Fair Wage Ordinance, which was the first time a major city had passed a One Fair Wage Ordinance in decades, I think. Saru is one of the hardest working organizers I've ever met, who is always coast to coast, building the movement for a living wage. And Saru, are you with us today?
I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes. How's it going?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Great. And I think this
I
might be your first time on the town hall.
Yes,
But
yes.
probably not the last time because this is a movement that I mean, hopefully we'll win it all here in the next couple years, but it might keep us organizing at least several more years. But Saru, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, and let's start there. Tell us about One Fair Wage.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for having me this afternoon and for spending some time thinking about wages. I know I'm biased. I lead an organization called One Fair Wage, but I just really believe in this moment, if you look at any poll, if you walk outside and talk to anybody outside of your house, out in the street, they will tell you that the top issue for most people right now is the cost of living and their ability to pay for things. And that, of course, is two sides. It's the cost of food and goods and housing. But the other side that's very related, that's very top of mind for so many Americans is how much money they take home and their ability to pay for things to feed their family, to keep a roof over their head. So to answer Mike's question, this journey for me started after 9/11. I was a young attorney and an organizer in New York City when 9/11 happened, and I was asked by the union that was inside the restaurant at the top of the World Trade Center, Windows on the World, which was at the 107th and 108th floor of Tower 1 of the World Trade Center. On that morning, 73 workers died and 250 workers lost their jobs in that one restaurant. And about 13,000 workers lost their jobs New York City wide. And I was asked as a young organizer and attorney to start a relief center for the workers who lost their jobs at Windows. We called it ROC, the Restaurant Opportunity Center, and started to organize restaurant workers first in New York City and then all over the country. And everywhere we went, and we would ask restaurant workers, first in New York City, and then frankly, everywhere, we would ask workers, what are your top needs and concerns in this industry? And they would always say, it's my wages, it's my wages, it's my wages. And when we looked at the government data, I'm also an academic. I teach now at UC Berkeley. At the time, I was teaching at NYU. We were doing participatory research with these workers and also looking at government data. And what we found was that the reason workers kept saying, it's my wages, it's my wages, it's my wages, is that the restaurant industry is the largest private sector employer in the United States of women and young people and immigrants and formerly incarcerated people, people of color. It is the largest employer of so many groups. It is the second largest private sector employer in the United States, period, second only to retail. 13.6 million workers nationally, number one fastest growing industry post-pandemic. And yet it has been the absolute lowest paying employer, hands down, for generations, dating all the way back to emancipation. And we were able to uncover this very ugly history of the wage structure in our industry, just looking at why is it that you have such a huge industry with the lowest wages? Well, it turns out that it is a direct legacy of slavery. So prior to emancipation, waiters in the United States were white men. They got actual wages. Tipping was not prevalent at the time. Tipping had originated in feudal Europe as an extra or bonus that aristocrats gave to their servants, but always on top of a wage. When it came to the States, it was in the late 1850s, and Americans at first rejected it resoundingly as a vestige of European feudalism. In fact, Alexis de Tocqueville came and wrote about American democracy and said one of the hallmarks of American democracy is that there is no tipping. We do not tip in the United States. But that changed because in 1853, waiters in the US went on strike for higher wages, and the restaurant industry started looking for cheaper labor. So 10 years later, when emancipation happened, the restaurant industry started hiring newly freed Black women and telling them, you are not going to get any wage at all. You're going to live on this new thing that's come from Europe called a tip. And for the first time in world history, we as Americans mutated the notion of tipping from being an extra or bonus on top of a wage, as it had been for generations in Europe, to becoming a replacement for wages for a population of Black workers. And the whole reason was so that the restaurant industry could access free Black labor after chattel slavery ended. And that idea that you could pay a worker nothing at all and they would live on tips, only created in the United States, it became law in 1938 as part of the New Deal, when everybody else got the right to the federal minimum wage for the first time. But tipped workers were left out and told, you get nothing, you get zero, you live on tips. And we went from zero in 1938 all the way up to $2.13 an hour, which is the current federal minimum wage for tipped workers in the United States of America, for a population that is overwhelmingly women, a population that mostly women working in very casual restaurants and bars, IHOPs, Denny's, Applebee's. That is the majority of where 14 million workers work. They struggle with the highest rates. You were talking about sexual harassment just before I came on. This is the industry with the absolute highest rates of sexual harassment of any industry in the United States. And that is because it is mostly women, highest number of single mothers, by the way, of any occupation in the United States, having to put up with so much from customers in order to get tips, meaning you have to do whatever the customer, you have to put up with whatever the customer does to you, whatever they say to you, however they touch you or treat you or talk to you, because the customer is always right. The customer, after all, is paying your bills, not your employer. And so you end up having to tolerate the worst sexual harassment, the worst racial bias, the worst harassment and bias period of any industry, because your income is so dependent on the moods and biases and desires of the customer. And that has resulted in this industry being the absolute lowest paying industry. Now, I want to say this didn't just fall from the sky. It wasn't something organically created or that God ordained. There was a very proactive trade lobby that's been around since 1919 called the National Restaurant Association. We call it the other NRA. It is led by the chains, the IHOPs, the Denny's, the Applebee's. Donald Trump is a card-carrying member of the other NRA, but we have just seen overwhelming power that this entity has over both Democrats and Republicans, which has resulted in this industry, these wages being stagnant for so many decades under both Democratic and Republican administrations, and why these workers feel so, frankly, disillusioned and disengaged from the political system in general. So I would really, I heard so much before I started talking about Donald Trump, and I have so many thoughts about our population, the working people, restaurant workers, the lowest wage workers in America, and their perspective on last year's election and their perspective on this moment as well. And the one thing I do want to say, I know we want to have a conversation, but one thing I do want to say to kick it off is when you get a wage of $2, literally $2, 43 states follow this legacy of slavery, and the vast majority of them have wages of $2, $3, $4, $5, or $6 an hour. When you have a wage that is that low, $6 or less, when I talk to my members, restaurant workers, 14 million restaurant workers, and we say we have to save democracy, we have to fight against fascism, we have to turn out and make sure we fight fascism, people say, well, what has democracy done for me? Democracy has given me a $2 wage. I work 3 jobs. I can't afford to feed my kids. And that has been the truth, regardless of who's in power, whether it's Democrats or Republicans. And so I want to have a really honest conversation here about what it will take to mobilize working people for democracy when they have not seen democracy deliver for them.
And Saru, I was in Arizona with One Fair Wage helping out on a petition campaign. I've been in Maryland. I've been in Illinois. I have been around the New York campaign, right? These are either purple or very democratic states that we've even struggled in, including probably, the most democratic states: New York, Massachusetts, Maryland, Illinois. Uh, like these are places that we have struggled to land major victories because of the power of the NRA. And so can you tell us a little bit about, yeah, let's forget about Donald Trump, that we can get Maryland State House legislators to get engaged. And when we do stuff, we get threatened by the other NRA, and they run rampant. And even in DC, the most democratic city in the country, I think 92% Democratic, just had a rollback of the one fair wage. So hey, think for Brandon Johnson a little bit in Chicago holding strong, but it's tough out there right now for even, in our bluest of blue spots, let alone places like I met where we're lost cause a little bit. So tell us a little bit about that fight and what that means right now in 2025.
Yeah. And thank you, Mike, for all your years, and Alan, all your years of partnership and support. I really, really appreciate it. Um, it has been a real struggle. It has been a 2 decades, frankly, of organizing these workers, fighting for higher wages, often winning, and then sadly seeing even Democrats roll these wages back. But I do want to say we've had some moments of victory over the last couple of years,
100%.
and I think a lot of it happened as a result of the pandemic. Look, with the pandemic, 6 million restaurant workers lost their jobs, and 2/3 of those workers told us they couldn't get unemployment insurance because in most states they were told their wages were too low to qualify for benefits. And so a lot of them were forced back to work before it was safe. And, look, the CDC named restaurants the most dangerous place to be during the pandemic. UCSF named restaurants the most dangerous place to work above hospitals. And when so many of these workers didn't get unemployment insurance, they were forced to go back to work before it was safe. And 12,000 workers died. I'm so continuously frustrated by how little we as America have recognized this like horrific tragedy that just occurred 5 years ago, where so many people died, and unnecessarily in our case, because they weren't given unemployment insurance. They weren't allowed the ability to stay home like the rest of us. They were forced to go back to work. More workers died in the restaurant industry than in healthcare environments, if you can believe it, because it was such a dangerous place to be. And most of them did not have access to healthcare. I mean, they earned $2, for God's sakes. So at that time, when it was so dangerous, and frankly, customers were so awful to these workers, the level of harassment went up, the health risks went up, and the wages remained stagnant. 1.2 million workers walked off the job and said, we're done with this industry. They left. And restaurants at that time were forced to raise wages in order to recruit and retain staff. And suddenly, after decades of saying it's impossible, we can never pay more than 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6, we'll go out of business, small businesses will shut down. How could you do this to us? How could you make me pay a minimum wage? Suddenly we saw restaurants across the country voluntarily raise wages to $15, even $20 an hour plus tips, because they couldn't get workers to show up any other way. And so we know it's possible. There are already 7 states where, including California, which is the largest restaurant industry in the country, where workers are required to be paid a full minimum wage with tips on top. And in those 7 states, California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Minnesota, Montana, and Alaska, we have the highest restaurant sales, job growth rates, small business growth rates, tipping averages of any states in the country. And so it was in that moment when workers were walking off the job and employers were raising wages that we started to win. We won one fair wage in DC, as you mentioned, with 75% of the vote. We won one fair wage in Chicago with your help. And we won one fair wage in Michigan last year with the Supreme Court ordering the state to move in this direction because of shenanigans the legislature had engaged in over the last couple of years on the issue. And I can explain more, but we've been on a real roll with workers winning these wage increases. And then last year, during the election, we were trying to put these issues directly on the ballot, and faced, frankly, real challenges with our party, the Democratic Party, not being willing to prioritize this issue, even though there was no poll. There was no poll in the United States that didn't list the cost of living as the top issue for most working people in America. And still, we begged and begged. I met with Kamala myself. We begged and begged for the party to elevate this issue, to speak about it, and they wouldn't. And then this guy comes along, Donald Trump, and he gets on the stage in Nevada and he says no tax on tips. And look, 2/3 of tipped workers don't even earn enough to pay federal income tax. Let me say that again. 2/3 of tipped workers don't even earn enough to be eligible to pay federal income tax. So it's not that they thought he was giving them, the panacea, but they did feel that he was recognizing them as an important enough population to pander to. When that happened, I went to the party. I said, please pander to us. Tell the restaurant workers you care, you know that they're struggling, and you think they're an important enough population that as a voter population that you're at least going to say, we'll raise your wages, we'll do something. Nothing. And so most of our folks either stayed home or, yes, voted for Trump. And I get so many questions like, what's wrong with your people? Why don't they know how important this is? Don't they understand? And yes, they do. They understand it very, very well. But when you are a woman working for $3.75 in Michigan, that means you work 3 jobs. And taking time out of one of those jobs to go vote when neither Democrats nor Republicans have delivered anything for you in terms of your wages, it's a very hard sell. And then this year, in 2025, to your point, Mike, this year in 2025, you would think electeds would have learned the lesson. People are struggling with the cost of living. That determined the election. And yet we saw Democrats in Washington, D.C. and Michigan and Colorado vote for the first time in U.S. history to roll back workers' wages, not even stop a wage increase, but roll back workers' wages, $4 an hour. In Michigan, $7.50 an hour. In D.C., cut it it was supposed to go up to $17 and cut it at $10. What is wrong with these electeds? Do they not see the polls we're seeing that show that the cost of living and affordability crisis is top of mind for voters right now, top of mind for workers right now?
And Saru, I just saw a thing about Florida. To live in Florida, each adult needs to earn $100,000 a year to have a comfortable life, right? And that's probably very similar to a lot of the country. So, we're it's heartbreaking. Even for people with good wages, it's hard to make to support your family. 3 kids, all about to go to college in the next 5 years, and it's awful out there. And Democrats are, we're progressive Democrats here. We want our progressive Democrats to lead the party, and so what do we? Can you talk to us a little bit about the living wage for all vision that you've helped launch, and maybe talk to us about how we can help directly with your state campaigns, national campaigns, and then maybe we'll take a couple questions. But tell us, so where do we go from here in this moment where Donald Trump is radically unpopular, but so are the Democrats?
Yes.
And
yes. So for all my railing and ranting, there is a really exciting, positive, hopeful potential for us to come together and really push on the issue that is top of mind, which is a living wage for all. So a few months ago, there was a set of articles in USA Today uplifting this rumor video that was circulating in the MAGA sphere that MAGA folks believe Donald Trump is going to raise the federal minimum wage to $25 an hour, which is ridiculous. He's not going to do that. But the fact that they believe and want a minimum wage of $25 an hour, when a lot of Democratic electeds are talking about $17, $15, $17, $18 an hour, it really is based on what you just said, Mike. If you go to the MIT living wage calculator, which I put in the chat, you will see that there is no place in the United States where even a single person with no children can survive on less than $20 an hour. And if you have children, certainly no less than $25 an hour. And so we really believe that we should be talking as, regardless of party, we should be mobilizing that, it's very hard to get working people to show up to a No Kings rally, as I said, or a hands-off rally when people are feeling like democracy has not delivered for them. But what is very mobilizing and inspiring, and I think we saw it in New York City and we're seeing it in Minneapolis, is the idea of a living wage and being able to afford to live in the place you live in. And so if you look at the MIT Living Wage Calculator, it tells you what you need to live anywhere. And the Living Wage for All campaign is a campaign of unions and worker organizations that have come together. And I really want to thank PDA for co-hosting this big convening we had in Los Angeles early June, 140 labor unions and work organizations coming together and saying, we are past the time of a fight for 15. That was over a decade ago. The new fight is a living wage for all. We need a minimum wage closer to the cost of living. And we're talking about numbers like 20, 25, and 30. We need a minimum wage that is all inclusive, no exceptions, because look at what leaving tipped workers out, even in blue states, has done to us. The tipped workers say, you've left me out, Democrats, over and over again. And this guy at least is giving me a tax cut. So leaving people out has not worked well for us. So it really has to be a living wage for all. So as a result of that new convening, we are moving living wage for all campaigns in New York and California and Illinois and Maryland, in Colorado, in Michigan, in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and a number of other states. We would love to work with PDA chapters on these campaigns. We need your help. If it's a state where we are trying to move legislators to pass a living wage for all, we need your help to do phone banking and to show up at lobby days and to help us move legislators on this. And if you're in a state where we can put it on the ballot, like DC and Michigan and Ohio and Colorado, we need your help to collect signatures like Mike did with us.
Great. Alan, you want to take it away for a second and maybe open up for some questions, and then we'll come back to some action. I think you're on mute, Alan. Alan, you're on mute still.
Now I'm on mute, right? You can hear me.
Yes, you're good.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Mike. And thank you, Saru. Yeah, and we'll go to the stack right now. I suppose I just want a point of emphasis, which is that, okay, the largest sector of workers in the country, is that correct, Saru? The restaurant workers?
That's right. Yes.
Right. Okay, so the most successful economic period we've had in the history of the country followed the New Deal, though there were flaws, of course, as you mentioned, huge flaws pertinent to, of course, this conversation. And but the theory then, within capitalism, so progressive Keynesianism, FDR-inspired policies, was very counter to what followed after Reagan and Thatcher. The idea central to a prosperous society was the working class, was a middle class, and that they had money in their pockets. They didn't have to worry about, there was no issues at the time around deleveraging their debt. The working class had money in their pockets and they could spend it in the economy. That was the base of society. And I did want to point out too, for people who don't know, when you mentioned that California has restaurant workers receiving minimum wage, but people do need to know, if you don't live in California, the minimum wage in California is not $7.25. I think it's 17 or 18 right now. It's in one of these phases where it creeps up $1 a year. So as you can see, California does, of course, have economic issues. We all probably heard about them, but nonetheless, it's the largest booming economy of any state. Clearly, every other state should draw from that lesson that having money in the pockets, it's not enough. $18 an hour plus tips for worker needs to get more than that to survive in California. And we know, especially to be able to live within range of LA and San Francisco. But it strikes me that given it's the largest sector of American workers, I mean, folks, what Saru is working on, what One Fair Wage is working on, not only is it a complement to PDA's economic policies, it really needs to be elevated for people to understand what it means to have a prosperous American society. Because you're talking about the largest sector of workers, getting them into the middle class through wages that work for the regional economies as they do in California. And it's a perfect example of a return to the era of policies that produced the greatest prosperity for the American working
That's
class.
right. And can I just tell you, you don't have to take it from me or you, Alan, to know this. Actually, in 2021, we almost won one fair wage in Congress. 8 Democrats sadly voted, shut it down in the Senate. Remember, we had control at that time, trifecta, blue trifecta. And of course, the National Restaurant Association was telling Congress, no, you can't do this. We can't pay more than $2. We'll go out of business. Well, in that moment, the CFO of Denny's was caught red-handed telling their shareholders on a shareholder call, actually, we'll be just fine because we pay, in California, we pay $15 plus tips. Now it's $16.50 plus tips. And Denny's California outperforms the system, meaning Denny's grows faster in California than any other state. On that call, the CFO said, why does this happen? It happens because we know our employees in Denny's are able to afford to bring their families to eat at Denny's, and Denny's grows faster as a result in California. So they know it. They've admitted it to their shareholders. They just don't want to pay more than $2, $3, $4, $5 in most of the rest of the country.
We have a great number of people on Stack, and I'll call them. You should know, and everybody should know. We apologize for not having people's cameras on. People have been in a lot of town halls. We got Zoom bombed horribly a while ago, so we only have the cameras on for the featured guests and the staff members. But Melissa Richardson is up first. She is a great activist in Arizona. Please unmute, Melissa.
Hello, thank you for having me. I am a longtime activist, as he said, and I'm a wheelchair user. And usually, after I graduate from college, they want to pay us not even in money, but in gift cards. How will like store gift cards, like Target gift cards for artwork? How will you help us out with the one fair wage?
So I didn't catch the whole question, but
May I repeat it?
Yeah,
sure.
please.
I said, like I said, I'm a disabled activist. I graduated from college, and they want to pay most people like myself, not even in money, but in gift cards. Like, here's your Walmart card. Thank you for your work. That's not a living wage. Social
Yeah.
Security is not enough to live on. Are we part of the one fair wage?
Absolutely. So our fight is to end all sub-minimum wages in the United States. There is a sub-minimum wage for workers with disabilities that was taken away and then brought back by Donald Trump. So in the ballot measures we're moving in states across the country and in the federal bill that we're pushing for, it's to end all sub-minimum wages. That means all workers who work in the United States would get a full wage with tips on top, including tipped workers who are currently excluded, workers with disabilities who are currently excluded, youth who are excluded in a number of states, gig workers who are excluded, and even incarcerated workers who get a sub-minimum wage of pennies on the dollar because of an exception to the 13th Amendment that allows for slavery in the case of incarceration. So our fight is to end all sub-minimum wages so that all workers, regardless of who they are, where they work, when they work, they get a full livable wage with tips on top.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Nina, please unmute.
Okay. I'm trying.
You got it. We hear you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. For Saru, I'm glad you're here. This is part of the activism that I'm doing right now. I'm part of a nationwide coalition called Workers Over Billionaires, and we've been making calls. I did over 300,000 so far across California, Texas, Georgia, Tennessee now, and in Florida. How do I convince these people as part of what you're doing? Because then they tell me, oh, Donald Trump is a man, he's going to do this. When the tariff situation, he preached to the choir of his base that he's going to lower the cost of everything, and now with everything is going up. And then these people, how do you counter that? I've been trying to push back on that, and now with Florida, comparing it to, my family up in Massachusetts with a minimum wage, we're low here. How do I counter that one? Can you answer that question for me?
Yeah. So, our fight is not to not to convince people to hate Donald Trump. The lucky thing is, the fortunate thing is that across the political spectrum, MAGA people, progressives, like the overwhelming majority of voters, regardless of political party or spectrum, agree that when you work, you deserve to be paid enough to feed your family and cover the cost of living. And that's why I was saying, I'll put it in the chat. There's a series of videos that MAGA people are calling for a $25 minimum wage. And so I really think that we have an opportunity with this issue in particular, which is top of mind for so many people across the political spectrum, to bring people to our side of pro-democracy by showing them that democracy can deliver for them. But we do that by actually delivering wage increases at the state and local level in multiple states. If we can do that, I think there is a pathway to show people that actually, I won't even say Democrat versus Republican. I'll just say there is a way to show people that the pro-democracy forces are there for them, whereas Donald Trump is not delivering a $25 minimum wage. But we can only do that not by words, not by convincing them Donald Trump is bad, but by actually delivering. I really do believe if we started delivering, like we have the votes in LA County to deliver a $25 minimum wage right now. If we did that, if we delivered on it and then started to deliver on 25 and higher in multiple places around the country, I really do think the way the fight for 15 has been inspiring across the political spectrum, we would have a chance to inspire people around something positive right now. The ability for democracy to deliver for them, rather than continuously trying to tell them why Donald Trump is bad. I think we can show them rather than using our words.
Thank you. And Mike Hirsch, please unmute. Mike's a staff member, and please unmute Mike. There you go.
Thanks so much, Alan. And thanks so much, Saru. I was active in the effort to raise the so-called sub-minimum wage in Maryland. And it always occurred to me that if minimum is the lowest, then what the heck is sub-minimum?
Exactly.
Oh boy.
Yes.
And we put together a really impressive coalition, and we had efforts where restaurateurs invited us in, showing that restaurants can flourish with a one fair wage, and they knew it. This was all the way from Montgomery County, where I live, to the far reaches of Maryland and Ocean City. And we had elected officials join with us. They put on the aprons and served and pitched in. It was really wonderful. And I want to thank you so much for the creativity and the effectiveness of that campaign. And I'd love to hear more about your plans moving forward.
Yes, thank you so much for being a part of that. The fight in Maryland continues. We actually have the votes in the Baltimore City Council to get this done, but there's been some delay because, sadly, the Washington, D.C. City Council, which is all Democrats, just voted to roll back tipped workers' wages from 100% to 75%. So our friends in the Baltimore City Council are saying, oh, we need to stop and think, because look at what they just did in D.C. So it's very frustrating. Fortunately, D.C. has a referendum process that allows us to collect signatures and stop what the D.C. Council just did. And doing that will help us in Baltimore. But statewide, we are still in conversation with the governor and the speaker. And actually, we're going to be doing another server for an hour in Ocean City on August 14th. So we'd love, if you're out there, we'd love to have you join us. Several elected officials have agreed to join and be a server, because we think that we can get the legislature to put the issue, a living wage for all, not just ending the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers, but raising the Maryland minimum wage above $20 an hour. Because if you look at the MIT living wage calculator, it's way up there in terms of cost. Put all of that on the ballot in November 2026, which will not only raise wages, but it will have the added bonus of getting a lot of unlikely voters to turn out to vote themselves a raise. We have seen wherever this is on the ballot, Michigan, Ohio, Arizona, Colorado, that a lot of unlikely voters, hundreds of thousands of them, turn out to vote themselves a raise. And then they vote for candidates that support that raise when they're at the ballot. And just one quick, I know we're running out of time, but one quick data point. Restaurant workers generally have a 12% voter turnout rate. But our experience is that when we put this issue on the ballot, we have seen a 300% increase among general population restaurant workers and voter turnout, and a 400% increase among young youth restaurant workers in terms of voter turnout. We know the thing that gets them to the polls is this issue. And we know the thing that helps them vote for candidates is if candidates run on this issue. So, please work with us to help us get these things on the ballot and get electeds to run on it.
Are you able to stay 10 more minutes or so?
Yes, I can.
I apologize to the staff. I just have a few questions. I think people will understand their importance. Mamdani's race, he elevated the word affordability to the center of the national dialogue. People, obviously the New York City dialogue, but people picked up that word is very positive right now in terms of reaching voters. Yeah, I mean, one of the things about everything that's happening with Trump and the crisis for the democracy, the republic, all the crises, is that when you look at successful social transformations in industrial technological societies over the last 200 years, the really major victories where you've had a significant recasting of wealth distribution in the society have followed a major crisis. So, revolutions, obviously, but wars, et cetera, and Great Depressions, et cetera. Of course, America failed to do that when we had the opening of the Great Recession, but Trump represents such a crisis. And this is a very complicated thing, but I think I would love to work One Fair Wage PDA to make a case. The Democratic Party, the moderate centrist Democrats, are a conservative political faction. There's public dissatisfaction with the state of the society on economic distribution. You're absolutely right. It laps every other issue, even with all these other crises. And if we can make a case to them that the best they hope for is a 50.1 victory, 49.9 over the Republicans, they don't change anything. They're just begatting this fascism. And they're suffocating the positive change, which is the progressive economic vision, that the core anchor is, as you said, money in people's pockets, living wages. And we have to make a case like that to the Democratic Party. And of course, and then this is maybe the most pointed question. Can you go through the 8 states you listed? I got New York, California, Maryland, Colorado, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania. I think I missed one in the first 4. And
yes, New York, Maryland, Illinois, California, Colorado, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania are the 8.
Yep.
But we also, I noticed people on the call we do have developing campaigns in Washington State, New Mexico, New Jersey, Virginia, Arkansas, Arizona, Hawaii, and would love to work with people in any of those. Frankly, we'd love to work with any of you anywhere that would like to start a living wage for all campaign. And can I say one thing about Mamdani and what you just said, Alan? Like, obviously Mamdani is, in my opinion, one of the most hopeful things that's happened this year. Clearly it was about affordability. And look, it is going to be a disaster if we cannot deliver on the things that he ran on. Now, Mamdani, New York City is preempted. So he ran on $30 by 2030. That was part of his affordability campaign, was a $30 minimum wage by 2030, which if you look at the MIT living wage calculator is frankly the least people need to live in New York City.
Sure, yeah,
but he cannot deliver on it because New York City is preempted from raising the minimum wage. So it will take our efforts, a statewide living wage for all coalition, to actually deliver on raising the minimum wage if we don't want to once again disillusion people who got newly turned on, excited again about the political system. We have to deliver. And so I'm really hoping to work with you all to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That is a very, very important point. I think there's going to be a lot of focus on them. And everybody on the call, take the note that Saru, do everything we can to work with people in dialogue, lift up New York City, and support his strategies upon victory. Of course, we have to get over that final hurdle of victory, too, in November. Yes. Let's go to Carly Fines. I saw that she was at the top of the stack, and then I think she dropped off. And Carly, you're up.
Hi, Saru.
Hi.
Going off on the disability thing, don't you think that people who live life with disabilities and chronic illnesses should actually be paid more than the $30 federal minimum wage you're proposing, like say 45 to 50 an hour for people with disabilities, because it inherently costs more to live life with disabilities and chronic illnesses. And if you live in that world and you end up getting knocked on your butt for a day or two because you got sick, wouldn't it be easier if they got paid more inherently as a rule, because it costs more inherently as a rule?
Um, yeah, I mean, I do think that there are multiple populations that have made arguments that they should get more for one reason or the other, either the nature of the work or, during the pandemic, people said we need, I'm even forgetting the word right now, sorry.
Well, medications and the like cost an arm and a leg, so.
No, I mean, there was hazard pay during the
yeah.
pandemic, right? So there have been multiple arguments for different populations getting higher than minimum wage. What we are fighting for, Carly, is a floor, a living wage floor that nobody can go below, that nobody could argue that because you're a person with disabilities or because you get tipped, you should earn less. So all for definitely particular groups, particular sectors going above that. But I do think we need to, what we need to do is come together collectively across sectors, across populations, to say there has to be a floor that nobody goes below. And that is that MIT living wage calculator floor.
I still think that when you have people with disabilities in your lives, it should be higher, and it should be higher as a rule, because I'm just trying to find ways to combat the workplace ableism that I've had to put up with for a big chunk of my life.
Well, thank you, Carly. And I think also, I mean, I don't know, when I heard your question, I also thought, and I don't know if this is a misguided way of thinking. This is, you obviously have a union or organization like One Fair Wage to talk to your members and understand through solidarity and coordination what the best policy is. But when I heard you say that, I imagined it would probably, if you had a higher wage paid and that was demanded upon the employer, you probably have less disabled people hire. So it sounds like that would be, I don't know, Saru, is like a government supplement really the campaign there that would be necessary if that was?
I think what we're trying to do is create the broadest possible coalition, even with MAGA folks. And to do that, it's hard to focus on particular sectors or particular populations. I will say, for me, I have been fighting for tipped workers to get a full minimum wage for the last 23 years, but we have come to realize that the only way to win is together. Our power is by joining forces with people across sectors, across segments, across different types of industries and types of workers, to come together to say we all deserve a living wage and there has to be a floor. And that the only way to win, these wage campaigns are so difficult, frankly, because we have both Democrats and Republicans against us, sadly. And so the only way to win is to unite across sectors on an issue that's so popular, to say there's a living wage floor for everybody.
We'll go to Michael Neal, and people can write info at PD America or Alan at PD America. And if people who we're not able to get to on the stack who have a question for you, we can forward those to you, right?
I'd be happy to answer. Yeah, any questions. Yeah.
Okay. Michael Neal, you're up, and please unmute.
Yes, I think that worked. Thank you. So Saru, both Melissa and Carly handled my first question, so I'm gonna ask the other question that came to mind, which is sort of technical. When you look at the MIT living wage calculator, which I'm very familiar with, you see a fair bit of data in different places given different people's situations. Two family household with 2 kids, single family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How do you decide when you're running a campaign what your target might actually be, when you say this is the amount that we're hunting for? I know that here in Denver, our 1881 is pretty good, but it's not good enough. But what target do we shoot for?
So great question, Michael. So I think the single person with no child wage is the absolute lowest that it should ever be. And right now, the cheapest county in the United States, McLennan County, Texas, is the cheapest county in the United States. A single person with no children needs $19.50 to just, what the MIT living wage calculator calculates is just survival, just covering the basics of food and housing and transportation, just survival. It's not, I always say, it's not buying Christmas gifts for your children or taking them even to the movies. It is just survival, and just survival in the cheapest county in the United States right now is about $20 an hour. Now, you are right that the real measure should be one person in a two-parent, two-child household, which is closer to $30 even in McLennan County, Texas, which is why we are arguing, and many now economists are now arguing, and even MAGA people are arguing, we really shouldn't be talking less than 25 anywhere in the country right now.
Thank you again. And, I just want to reiterate what Saru said. In the 21st Century Economic Bill of Rights, and this was back in 2022, I think, Data for Progress did a poll. And of course, the top number one, it was same with Roosevelt in our proposal, is a living wage, right? In Economic Bill of Rights. This polls off the charts. I mean, people just understand it is just, fundamentally just. And upon reflection, they realize it's what people need, right? But yeah, we're up against 45 years of, the market has the right answers, ideology dominating everything. And look, it is an honor to have you here. By the way, people should pick up Saru's book, One Fair Wage. And yes, we'll be working together going forward. And on one level, what PDA is very involved in is, of course, trying to push the Democratic Party. There's the party, there's the DNC, there's state parties, but then there are candidates and senators on all those fronts. Coming out of this crisis, we have to, center the American left and the progressive movement in the idea of the American working class being able to have, and the largest sector of the American working class centered too, and have a great life. By the way, one note of hope. I don't know if people have been following it. It's a little bit like Mamdani. Jeremy Corbyn has formed a new party in England. Have you followed this? Have you seen what you had to know what's happening? People may not know this because there's so much chaos in the world. So they announced it, and he has a partner who also left the Labour Party, and they now have, in 1 week of signing members up, more members in this new party than the Labour Party has ever had, above 600,000. And they're about equal in the polls with the Labour Party. But the way those elections are structured and the parties are structured, this doesn't mean this is going to ascend to win. Like you might have noticed, Reform, the fascist party, had a ton of votes and very few members of parliament. But this is another example that the Labour Party comes in, it's imposing austerity. It is not what people want. And looking forward to working with you in solidarity going forward, Saru. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, everybody. Happy to answer more questions via email.
Thank you so much. And everybody, please stay on Stack still. We're going to go to, just an open dialogue. We're going to talk about the initiatives around the country, just a 5-minute framing on it from Dan O'Neill. And then we'll go back to the Stack, and we can, of course, talk about the money and politics issue that Dan will feature. And then we'll talk more about the One Fair Wage campaigns around the country. And again, the importance of, even with all the crises that are consuming us, to recognize that, for us to be an ascendant progressive movement, that, again, as I sort of said in the intro to this town hall, will, of course, address strengthening democracy, the constitutional republic, sane foreign policy, a just foreign policy pertaining to the United States, and obviously situations like Gaza, where U.S. foreign policy is about as wrongheaded as it could be. And then the kind of crises that are getting all the headlines this week. We need to reaffirm safety in the workplace, recognize the crises and points of crises in people's lives, such as sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, harassment in the workforce, reaffirm what justice looks like in the workplace for all workers in that regard, and move forward out of this crisis with a new positive vision for America. But where people are at in their day-to-day lives, and remaining what I think will always be front and center, is, again, a recasting of one of the two major parties back to being a party that centers the interests of the working class, the majority of the population, and that would be beneficial to all people. We have a highly precarious middle class. I think you go way up into the 80th, 90th percentile of the population, and I think a politics of economic justice, I think people recognize are a social priority. And so One Fair Wage is a great organization. We look forward to working with them going forward. And right now, let's have our PDA to do updates from Mike Fox, and then we'll be back and we'll be talking about getting money out of Democratic Party primaries with Dan O'Neill. Mike.
Or can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. All right, gang. I'll make this really quick because we're running a little bit behind here.
But I'll be off mic for about 3 minutes, okay?
All right. Then I'll cover 3 minutes. All right. So these are all folks who have kindly donated today. I want to thank Dorothy, as always, for your more than kind $100. Anyone who can match or beat that, please do. We're a little bit behind here, but nonetheless, positive energy is thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, phone banker Lois, for double dipping, and phone banker Mary Ellen for double dipping, and phone banker Beverly for double dipping, and Becky and Carol and Joseph, Lorna, Kathy, and phone banker Rick double dipping, and Michael and Yvonne, Susan, Dr. Deutsch double dipping, Dr. Deutsch up in Pennsylvania, as always. Thank you, brother. And Quincy and phone banker Aaron double dipping, and Jan, thank you so much for your more than kind $50 a month contribution. And Dennis and Maxine and Carol and Terry, likewise a sustaining donation. Thank you, Terry. And phone banker Mary double dipping, and Bob and Neil and phone banker William and Jason and phone banker Jane, Mary, Dr. Sonneborn out in California, as always, double dipping. Thank you, sir. And Margaret and Michael, as always, double dipping. And Mary, thank you for your monthly sustaining donation. And Michael, who starts us off out of Illinois every week for your more than kind weekly $5 donation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We're a little bit short on our goal for new phone bankers. We're sitting at 11. I need at least 9 more. So please do pile on the volunteer link, pdamerica.org/volunteer. If you do not see it in the chat, pdamerica.org/volunteer, or just go to pdamerica.org and you'll see the tab there. You will also see the donation link. I'm also going to be tossing into the chat our to-do list, which is lengthy. So please do hit that link. It's the Google Doc that I'm about to toss into the chat. Bookmark that. It's a dynamic document, so it's constantly being updated, so you're up to speed there. And otherwise, Alan, are you back with us? Or do I still need to keep on yapping? Alan going once. Alan going twice. All right, it's looking like I need to keep on yapping. Dan O'Neill, you're going to give us an update on the incredible work that y'all have been doing in the Arizona Democratic Party, getting big fat money out of primaries there, my brother. Give us a heads up on that and let us know about the Monday call. Dan O'Neill.
Thank you, Mike, and I hope Alan comes on here pretty soon. But hey, everybody, what a great call so far. One Fair Wage. Everybody needs to get involved in that campaign. I'm here to talk about another campaign that we're launching nationwide. I'm active, as are several people on the call here from Arizona, active in our Arizona Democratic Progressive Council. We call it council here. It's a caucus, basically, a progressive caucus. And that caucus has been very, very active. We have over 350 members of the caucus in little old Arizona. But anyway, back in June, led by the Progressive Caucus, we made a little bit of a history by becoming the first state party to pass a strong resolution that bans billionaires and corporations from buying our elections during the primaries. So we have a process starting in Arizona that will just do that. It'll put penalties and things into motion that will restrict in very put serious limits on PACs and organizations that come in the last minute to try to take over our primaries and influence our primaries. So we are going to have a Zoom call on Monday, and we're inviting doers, people who want to learn what we did in Arizona, and actually was also North Carolina. The party in North Carolina modeled off our resolution and did pass a resolution. So now there's 2 state parties that have done it. So we want to, we're going to have a Zoom call to learn what we did in Arizona and to get people to work, to do just that around the country. And I think the idea is to come off of Monday's call with 5, 10 other state parties that are moving in that direction. And if we could get that, that would be fantastic. The DNC, there are activists in the DNC like Larry Cohen and others that are now putting similar type of resolution in motion at the DNC. But as many state parties as possible that could get this, it would be fantastic. So there's a whole bunch of stuff I could talk about in terms of the Progressive Caucus, what we did, but I really encourage anyone who is involved with their Democratic Party, is in a caucus or a council, or like doesn't have to be a progressive caucus. It could be most Democratic parties around the country have at least a women's caucus or African American caucus. So if you don't have a progressive caucus in your state, get involved with another caucus. Use our resolution, adopt it, put a few changes, put your state name in there, and see if you can get it through your resolutions committee and get it passed. Let me tell you this. This is very, very popular. No one is going to disagree with it. You just have to kind of weave through the ins and outs of the party bureaucracy sometimes to get it done. But it is wildly popular. At our vote at the state committee in June, of about 550, 575 members, it was unanimous almost on a voice vote. There was nobody against it. So that's the kind of popularity a resolution like this, and the impact of a resolution like this is, if more state parties take it up, it's something that we can make some real changes. So with that said, Alan, I could go on for hours about this, but you might have a couple of questions, and I'm going to try to drop a link in the chat that will.
I already dropped it, Dan. You're good.
You dropped it already?
Yep.
Okay.
You're all good. You don't have to worry about it.
Which one did you put in?
The Monday night call.
Okay, the Monday night call. Great. All I'm doing here is adding our website, our campaign website, which is Stop Big Money AZ, and it goes into the resolution is in there, how we got endorsements from around the state from key people, and there's a list of endorsements. So it gives you a little bit more of the background. So you can check that out. It's called stopbigmoneyaz.com. Okay, with that said, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, and I really want to encourage people around the country to go into this with a sense that this can't be won. As Dan just said, and as was the case in North Carolina, this swept through. I don't think the primary barrier to turning the Democratic Party more progressive are actually the people who are Democratic Party in positions of being like in central committees, or they're elected through their Democratic Party to say, maybe be in the body of your state Democratic Party that would have a final vote on this. I was at the DNC meeting where Ken Phillips won, and that was a progressive victory. It was clear, the candidate who was endorsed by Schumer and Pelosi and Jeffries lost, and lost almost 2-1 in the end. And so the rank and file people inside the party are not advocates for the consultancy class. And there are real barriers to us getting big money out of the Democratic Party primaries. But the more states we have adopt this in the way that Arizona's gone about it and North Carolina is, especially if we can go on a winning streak, that will create incredible leverage and raise awareness that the base of the Democratic Party wants candidates who do not take big money from, or, you know, and they're not supported by massive independent expenditure PACs and corporate money, et cetera. And obviously, when you look at elected Democratic Party officials, they and their campaign consultants are more of a barrier on this. But if we win these resolutions state by state by state, then we can just clearly, first of all, we'll have momentum, we'll have support for the candidates who don't want to go that route, and we can be very clear in our message. You do not want to be taking big money, or we're going to have to say you are not where the Democratic Party is, and we'll have a very powerful wedge even going into the 2026 primaries, and certainly by the 2028 primaries. And this is the way we're going to start getting big money out of Democratic Party politics, or at least it's the route that has the momentum right now that we're going to be on. It's the path that we're on. Let's keep walking down this path. Let's keep having victories. Let's proceed with the hope and the reality that we can get big money out of Democratic Party primaries. Any candidate that takes it, that will be a losing hand for them to do so. Big money has perverted Democratic Party primaries like nothing else in recent years. Candidates who should have won were defeated by big money, and we can get this stuff out through this process. So I hope people across the country can coordinate with the Democratic Party activists they know to become one themselves, and also to push for a resolution like this and to advocate for it. The Democratic Party base supports it, I don't know what, 95-5? Yeah.
Crazy. Yes. Alan, I just want to emphasize, thank you for what you just said. Everyone that's working within their Democratic Party now, or have aspirations to do that, take our resolution, steal it, use it, and get it through the process in your party, in your Democratic Party, in your state. And if you want to know how we did it, show up on Monday. We're going to give you a blow by blow. Or I'll put my email and contact information in the chat. Anyone who would like to contact me personally, I will do what I can to answer your questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And let's keep your mic live and let's go to the stack. I know people must want to talk about one fair wage. Of course, every subject can be brought up, but the focus here is if people do have questions for Dan on getting big money out of Democratic Party primaries, of course, this is a huge, absolute A+ priority for PDA in terms of the structure of the Democratic Party. And it really is for Democratic Party activists across the country. Yeah, so let's go to Tina Marie. And Tina, please unmute.
Aloha, I'm Tina Marie from Hawaii. I am a assistant secretary for my county committee. I'm also co-chair of my state's women's caucus, so I'm already got my foot in the door and I want to do more. I know that primaries is where we can really root out the incumbents and root out the establishment folks, but yet primary turnouts have like 25% voter turnouts come out for primaries. So if we really want to boost and getting rid of the establishment, we really have to have people come out more in the primary. So I want to know what this group does to help encourage more voter turnout in the primaries so that we can get rid of the establishment and get rid of all the people that take big money.
Wow. Well, okay. We're on a bit of a roll, Tina. And Dan and Mike, if you want to chime in, Mike, anybody, Donna, who's here. We're on a bit of a roll with some very successful campaigns to support candidates. And of course, we're in between the scheduled primary dates and we have special elections. But of course, primaries are spread out. So we can put a real focus, not only by coordinating our local members. By the way, you have a very distinctive situation in Hawaii and have had it for a few years. In many respects, Hawaii has, and people don't know this, folks, I think the voting record of you have 4 members of Congress, 2 and 2, right? And the combined voting record of Hawaiian members of Congress, and just federally to focus on that, has been as progressive as any state in the country. But one of your 2 Congress people in the House is distinctly not part of that tradition. So you ended up with a conservative, right, in Metro Honolulu. And is that right, Tina? Have I got that right? Is Tina? Oh, Tina needs to be unmuted again. If you can ask Tina to unmute. But so we mobilize our local base to get feedback from them in primaries and hopefully have a candidate they support. And we have a policy template that really is required for a candidate to get a PDA endorsement, but it's very much in line with the Congressional Progressive Caucus, for instance. And then because primaries are at different times in the calendar, even by the time we get to 2026, let alone special elections like 2025, we do mobilize our sort of national apparatus for our endorsed candidates to really pump phone calls in to support the candidate and provide infrastructural support however we can. That's the sort of the PDA model. And we're available if somebody wants to try to, we can split between coordinated campaigns and independent expenditure campaigns, but we focus on the getting shoes on the ground, making phone calls, contacting voters. So that kind of grassroots work is what we do, Tina. Is Tina able to unmute now, folks?
If I can find her.
She's
should be under T, right?
one thing we're also going to.
Yeah, we got a huge stack too, guys.
Alan, just quickly, we're going to support candidates who pledge to not take big money, and that will make a big difference. Will be, the rank and file are going to say that's the candidate. Yes, they're for sure not going to take big billionaire money, which in most cases is Republican money in some of these PACs.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, well, Tina, we'll be in touch. Dan and I will be in touch and get in touch with us too. Dan at pdamerica.org, Alan at pdamerica.org, and Bart Dame has been a long time anchor in Hawaii. GL, you're up next. Please unmute. And sorry, Tina, about not being able to unmute you again. GL, please unmute. I can hear you. Hello?
Hello.
You're live.
My name is GL Gary Lee from Brooklyn Kings, New York City. New York. I got you all's message, and I want to add to what one of the young ladies said about abusive workers in union rights and Democrats who literally voted for wages to be literally rolled back to $4 an hour now. And I have seen those things happen, what that young lady said. Now, in some workplaces, workers, they have to work in bad conditions, sometimes unsafe conditions. They don't get paid well, and they're disciplined unfairly, and they have to tolerate certain forms of harassment, abuse, or persecution on the job. And I also seen that happen where, now she said that it was literally the Democrats who voted for wages to be rolled back to $4 an hour now. That also I've seen happen. Those kind of Democrats, which have several names, Independent Democratic Council, IDC, or Renegade Democrats, RD, or you call them obstructionist establishment Democrats, OED. They align them, although they're supposed to be Democrats, they align themselves with Republicans. They vote like Republicans, and they're actually Republicans that look like Democrats. There's one here in New York City right now. It's our mayor, Eric Adams.
Sure.
My coalition's Met Council keeps saying that he happens to be a Republican, looks like a Democrat. And that goes double for Andrew Cuomo, who was our governor, and he's trying to run for mayor. They threatened to sell out the people of New York City, also the Brooklyn lawmaker, Kevin Parker, and some other special IDCs, you know, Democrats who line themselves with Republicans. There's Corey Johnson, Rodney Bishop, Matthew Eugene, Josh Pierre, Joseph Manchin, Yvette Clark, and Zelnor Myrie. At first,
Would you put Torres in there?
um,
Grew up in the Bronx, Richie Torres.
yeah, so we were told. And I'm also, I also want to mention animals were also victims of abuse of their workers' rights and their union rights. All right. Here comes one example. I saw a report in the news where horses they're found they're found malnourished. You know, they don't get food and water and needed health care. That means the horses don't even get any wages, and they're forced to work in sweltering heat all day so they fall down from the heat. And instead of getting them medical attention, they beat them to force them to keep working.
Well, Gary, thank you. And also, I hope, look, we're all very hopeful that Mamdani can win. And even with the animal mistreatment, I mean, obviously, if anybody goes to New York City, they see the mounted police, and it sounds like the abuse is terrible. We do have to run, though, because we've got a huge stack. I appreciate your feedback. And I mean, are you hopeful, very quickly, are you hopeful Mamdani will win?
Yes, I voted for him.
Great. We endorsed him. Well, thank you, Gary. Thank you for all your feedback.
Thanks for organizing it.
Thank you. Let's go to Heidi now. Please unmute Heidi. Heidi, yeah, great. You're live, Heidi.
I'm eating. Forgive me. I was took the opportunity to while I was on stack. Do you want to go to somebody else and then put me on the stack after I've finished chewing?
Sure. You'll be after Nola. Nola, then back to Heidi, then Rick. Nola, please.
Yes, I have questions, but I've designed them that require quick answers. When you were speaking on this about people being exempt from minimum wage laws, you named three groups of people, including convicts. So my first question is, does that exemption apply to convicts even after they've done their jail time, paid their debt to society?
I don't believe that's on the statutes of any state, but I could be wrong. These would be questions better for Saru. I'm not an expert on all of the wage laws. There are some terrible laws on the books around former people who serve their time. I don't know that the wage structure applies once you're out of jail. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
She's not here anymore?
No, she's not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll say take care.
Thanks. Heidi, you're up again. Hope the lunch is good.
Yeah, it's I'll spare you. Anyway, but I'm calling. I wanted to find out if there was a way that PDA could help in putting together a 40th anniversary reunion. I mean, I know that I've spoken about this before, about the Berklee College of Music's teacher strike happening in 1985 or 86 rather. And I'm just wondering if there's any way that PDA might be able to help in like networking towards other people besides just that, and the Harvard Living Wage campaign to celebrate a victory for people at Berklee College of Music in Boston.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying. That's in Boston. People do get confused and assume it's Berkeley, California. Yeah, by the way, one of our steering committee members from Young Progressive Democrats of America is a graduate from Berklee College of Music. I will let you know that there was a great victory a few months before, and that was an important strike, as was the strike at Yale, where I attended. And that victory for the workers and the formation of a second on-campus union, this one at Yale was for dining hall workers. No, dining hall workers had it already. It was for clerical and technical staff. and it was a big victory for the union movement, which of course those are both important struggles because it really built momentum for what continues on as the organizing on campuses across the country. Well, up until Trump, and now we'll see how that can proceed. But thank you. I mean, I think that's going to have to be a local thing, but we should certainly all be doing everything we can to support unions around the country. There's so much going on. We went from the most favorable organizing environment for American unions, thanks to one of the best wings of the Biden administration, to, it really hasn't kicked in how bad this is going to be. But union solidarity is a huge, huge thing right now because the NLRB is going to be terrible from the Trump administration. Thank you, Heidi.
Alan, let me just tell Heidi, if that seems like something we should do locally, and you should get in touch with PDA in Massachusetts and in Boston, and we can help you do that. Just get in touch with us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, those kind of questions, do bring them up and ask them. Of course, national PDA, we're going to be focused on whatever we're focused on, and we do occasionally we want to make note of things happening locally. But yeah, Dan's suggestion is really wise there. Rick, how you doing? Please unmute, Rick. Rick?
The little icons that usually have you show your name disappeared. I guess that Sarah's gone. And what I wanted to know if she's working with Jobs with Justice, because they were instrumental in getting an increase in living wage and paid sick time initiative passed this year, and our state legislature, as they've been doing for 40 years, overturned it.
Right.
We're now doing starting another petition drive to get a constitutional amendment that would keep them from overturning anything that the voters approve. So I have to commend the Democratic Party. They filibustered, and the Republicans have such a supermajority, they killed the filibuster so they could pass the law. So, there's some good news coming out of Missouri, and that's unusual.
Thank you, Rick. And my understanding is, and Mike Olson may know more about this than I do, but One Fair Wage is definitely a coalition building organization, and I'd be very surprised if they don't form coalitions and work together with Jobs for Justice. I imagine they do, but Mike, I think, might be able to give
and Alan, Paul Stapleton Smith, who I think is on the call, works with Jobs with Justice in Arizona, and he may know that answer because we had the campaign here in Arizona for a while.
Yeah.
And also, Missouri and Arizona Jobs with Justice, probably the two best Jobs with Justice chapters in the country. So, what a powerhouse. But One Fair Wage works in coalition with, I think there's 140 unions that they are working with on this, including the teachers, NEA, and so I think 100%, people are trying to work together and build a coalition. Now, sometimes things get a little gnarly and groups don't necessarily work together that closely or effectively, but it's definitely a coalition group.
Yeah, so that's a yes, I think, and I think what Mike said, and of course PDA, we always want to try to make sure that the coalition is built up and works well and doesn't compromise on its policies and positions. Thanks, Mike. Joseph Torres, please unmute.
Hi there.
Yep.
Hi, Joseph Torres, calling from Waukegan, Illinois. I'm like an hour north of Chicago. I was just curious as to, everyone's talking about, what's going on with the country with, what Donald Trump and Elon Musk have done to, really hurt us at all. And I was wondering, is there any way that we can retaliate back to them and ensure the American people that, hey, they've done this to us. I'm sure there's something we can do, financially back to them, and also to make sure, like, for example, like, hey, have Elon Musk help us pay for our healthcare if he claims he's such, the world's richest man. Find some way to, divert his funding somehow to help us out, since he's attacked the American people.
I certainly agree with the sentiment. I went to a demonstration at the new Elon Musk high-tech Tesla charging plant drive-through theater in Hollywood. and drive-in theater, sorry. And the demonstration, this was 8 days ago. It made international news, but and we certainly Los Angeles does not feel pleasantly disposed towards Mr. Musk. It's a little surprising he built that thing in Hollywood, but I think the plans were laid well before he was, doing what he was doing with Trump and stuff. Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, look, I actually think in terms of, look, actually, your point is well taken, Joseph. I know a lot of people must be intensely frustrated, leaving Musk aside. Well, Musk goes into his influence in the Trump administration, and we all have to recognize that, like, the balance of the money that guy makes is on the set of the government support for his business.
Correct. And
They're not great. So with Musk directly can tie in with the bigger thing we have to do in that regard, the contracts he gets, which is we have to, on front after front after front, make our constitution. I don't like using that imperative at the top sentence because it sounds like the Trump slogan, but we have to make sure that when we come into power in 2028 with the presidency, that we love, of course, to have both houses of Congress, really need it. We probably need to remake our constitutional republic back to being healthy and whole again. Probably 12 straight years of having at least the Senate and the White House, because the courts are so stacked with right wingers, and you got to control the U.S. Senate for the court appointments. But we have to go through on each sort of not to silo issues, but on every front they are weakening what is the structures and institutional structures of support for the American people and the working class that have made this country so prosperous. And of course, nothing was perfect before, so we'll actually have an opportunity to make things even better on front after front after front.
Correct, because I've talked to some individuals who like didn't even vote in the last election and tried to tell them, you should vote, even though it's probably not the candidates you really want, because do you really want Trump in office? And their response was, I'm just not going to vote. And I'm like, well,
look, I think we're in a very interesting position politically. Thank you for the dialogue and the thoughts, Joseph, because you are getting to something that's really at the heart of what we have to achieve and how difficult it is to maintain a coalition to defeat the fascists when the coalition right now is between progressives and basically corporatist Democrats.
Correct.
And until there's some shift in that, where more people come into our voting against the fascists, then we have to maintain this coalition just to defeat the fascists so we can even begin to proceed to rebuild things, as I was saying. Having said that, however, the corporatist Democrats, I think it's even worse than the idea. Look, some of the people who get globbed in there are reachable. We have to try to reach them and explain we can't just have a status quo anti-politics. When the public is so dissatisfied with the social contract, they're going to elect the only option for change that they have, which would be then the fascist right if the progressives are suffocated. I think a good number of previously moderate Democrats are getting that. But still, there's a real risk that this Democratic coalition, if the moderates remain, and this is terrible to hear, folks, but you can see it with the Labour Party in England, which I mentioned earlier, they will come in, there'll be budget deficits, and they'll call for austerity. So the very things we have to do, certainly on governmental programs, and all that's been stripped and ripped apart by DOGE, we need to build those things back up because they were performing essential social services. Look at the U.S. Postal Service. All these things need to be rebuilt. There's a real risk that our Democratic partners, with whom we have to beat the fascists, will come in and say we need austerity because of deficits, and we can't. They're not going to do that all the way through to SNAP programs and Medicaid, et cetera. We should have no illusions about this. So we have to win this argument. We have to hold the coalition together while winning the argument within the party. I actually think both things are doable. And we also then have to, this is also important too, even in a week where the news is as ugly as it is, but then you can see at the end of the week, we have people who supported Trump. I'm sure of those 80,000 people in that football stadium who were booing Trump. There are tons of people who voted for him. They're disgusted with his behavior. They also know his promises of improving the economy are failing. They're not going to work, and it's not going to be a redistribution of money to the middle class and the working class like they campaigned it would be. It doesn't do that. It wasn't designed to do that. It was BS in the way they were campaigning it. So now we can draw those people in. And if we can draw in the working class MAGA base, then we'll have to at least support a progressive economic agenda, because that will produce the results they want in their lives economically. I do think the constitutionalist moderate Democrats are not lost to us in any way. I think many of them are they see themselves as savvy politicians. If we pull the party to the progressive or the left, as it were, a good balance of those politicians elected will come with us. But that's the work we have to do, and we have to walk that tightrope. And there's about 3 different tightropes interconnected there. And we have to stay up on the tightrope.
Right.
Hey, Joseph, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Alan. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. And let's go to Nicole and then Demetrios. And yeah, let's keep going. Nicole, please unmute.
Hello. Yes. I'm talking. I'm trying to link the questions together, and I'm thinking about this as a person who supported myself waiting tables part-time 50 years ago while in college. And I'm horrified to think that $2.10 was my minimum wage as a waitress 50 years ago.
Wow.
And then I went on to becoming a small business employee in the healthcare industry. So my idea is that we need to bring the employers to our side, not just the restaurant owner, but the employers in the tourism industry, the healthcare industry, and other small businesses owner who all have one problem in common: affordable healthcare. So I think that one fair wage campaign can tie to fair taxes, affordable healthcare, and saving our Social Security at the same time. Instead of our pay, going to pay the salaries of the CEO, the stockholders of middlemen insurance companies, we can link those 3 issues together to address the problem of affordability. And as far as no big money in the primaries, the first question that comes to my mind is that, will this lead to only the people who are independently wealthy getting elected because they're the only one that can afford the cost of running a campaign? Should we tie this to a ranked choice?
That, of course, that could work, or it could help. But I also think publicly funded campaigns is something we support. And though at this hour, the national organizing momentum is on the issue that you, of course, just cited a potential flaw in it. And the only way to get, I don't think big money in politics has absolutely distorted American elections. There's no doubt. But I always do point out to people that the neoliberalism, the austerity logic, which didn't rip apart the social democratic social contracts in Europe, but they got slightly weakened over the last 30 years in a set of countries where there's no money in politics, and most of them are publicly funded elections. And in some cases, big parties found workarounds to sort of draw money into them to get the voices of more conservative candidates heard more. So there's always a struggle in that front. But I do think self-funded candidates are a risk. But I think if we get people, by getting money out of the Democratic Party primaries is a very big step and a first step towards revitalizing people's faith in the democracy. I mean, what Saru said was correct about people being very busy and having a hard time voting, but they also don't vote because they don't really see anybody advocating for their issues. And I think if a progressive-led effort to get money out of Democratic Party primaries can be a major step towards reaffirming people's confidence in the Democratic Party, and also showing that the party is going to be something different than it has been. And if that's the case, we should remember that in the second Bernie Sanders run for president, he raised more money than any other candidate. And he refused to take money from any billionaires. If people don't know the story, one billionaire family did give money to Sanders. They maxed out and he gave the money back to them. And so average was like $18 a donation. So there are, a very large country with large population. So small donations with momentum, as with Mom Donnie, can raise a lot of money. So thank you, Nicole. Those are all great questions. And I'm just going to not try to answer the earlier ones because I don't want them too long-winded. But you, in raising those, I think that was very important for people to hear them. And thank you for your thoughtful comments. Let's go to Demetrios. And we're almost at the top of the hour. Demetrios, please unmute. Demetrios? I think you're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
Yeah, nope. Demetrios is having a tech challenge of some sort. Want to go to Michael?
Go to Michael, yeah.
You guys hear me?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, so I'm a 7-year Army vet, right? So I lay this onto everybody, right? We, the people, are the bosses of everybody in the government, to include the President of the United States. Everybody should get food stamps, housing, health insurance, travel, education for free as long as they work. The President of the United States gets it, and he's working, he or she, whoever that may be, works for us. I mentioned this to progressive talk shows, and there's a pause. We can't afford that. You know what we spent in this illegal war in Afghanistan and Iraq? At least $3 trillion, probably closer to $6 trillion by the time we get done paying these disabled benefits to soldiers and everything. We got plenty of money to do it.
Yeah, well, just go through again for the list for everybody, because you listed them at the top of your comment, and
sure.
So say again what you're saying. You said I know you said food stamps, which now would probably be digital. They would be food stamps, where they could be if you needed it. Go ahead, Michael. Go ahead.
Everybody, as long as they work in this country, should get housing, food, education, travel, and healthcare for free. Really, as long as they work. The President of the United States works for us, whoever that might be, and they get a full schedule of benefits, and we're their boss.
By travel, you mean free public transportation?
Yeah, free transportation.
I know,
free
I just clarified.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a patriot. I'm a 7-year Army vet.
Oh, yeah,
my father was a vet. We spent on these wars in Iraq and Afghanistan at least $3 trillion, probably closer to $6 trillion. We got plenty of money.
Oh yeah, and I love what you're saying. I was just clarifying around the travel, but also, one thing that is also absent from the American economic social contract that's available for every other prosperous country is guaranteed vacation time. I mean, talk about a winning political issue. I mean, who's going to vote against a mandate for paid vacation?
I joined. If you guys could see me visually, but you can't. Everybody says, "Well, thank you for your service." I tell everybody the same thing. I'll tell you. Soldiering with benefits. Yes, absolutely. Soldiering without benefits, not interested. And I always wanted to be a soldier. I'm a patriot. My ex-wife was Air Force physician. She joined just for the benefits. There's a lot of them do it. I don't blame. She called it the Air Force, by the way, not her words, not mine. Number two.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Number two, real quickly, the Reagan era. We still haven't recovered from the Reagan era. And people that are on the Zoom call today, don't you remember? And probably Mike Fox remembers, but a lot of people don't remember. We went in the wrong direction during the Reagan era, and we still haven't recovered. Right. We lost our factory base, we lost our union base. Mm-hmm. He said, "Screw the environment." We lost. He gave too many tax breaks to the rich, and we still haven't recovered from that. And I always forget. Oh, there's always something I forget. He didn't end the Cold War, by the way. Mikhail Gorbachev did. I served under Reagan. So,
sure, yeah.
I mean, real quickly, neoliberalism, Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton had to get the soft money behind him to win. He wouldn't have won without the soft money. I worked on this campaign, one of the first campaigns I volunteered for, and I was considering voting for Ross Perot. So
yeah, I don't think he wins without Ross Perot too. So
right, and so Bill Clinton wouldn't have won unless he got the soft money behind him, and he was calling on a live mic talking about soft money, but still we were way better off under Bill Clinton than any Republican. And we lost our union base, and the Democrats lost our funding because of the Reagan era. Last thing, move to amend. I was in move to amend when I was in Alaska. I should join again. I don't know if you guys sponsor it before.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we're worked closely with them in the past. Yeah.
Good. The Citizens United, once again, the Republicans, Last thing I'll say, my brother-in-law was a lifelong Republican outside of Bucks County, outside of Philadelphia and Bucks County. We do have a lot of hope because after his father was a Republican and he voted for Reagan because, you know, Reagan was a big cowboy, haha. And he said, I'm done with the Republican Party. So I think there's a lot of hope. I think we can seize the opportunity as long as we act. That's all I
Thank you,
got to say.
Michael. Thank you for your all the great insights and emphasis on the points you emphasize are right in line with PDA. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
Robert, you're up. Robert Dickinson.
Yeah, I have a couple comments about the minimum wage in restaurants. I think you can't set a minimum wage nationwide. I think it would have to be based on the average wage in each state and sometimes in smaller counties or towns to make it work. Because somebody in Mississippi probably can live on $20 or $25 an hour, but you certainly can't do it in San Francisco or New York. You probably need twice that much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're foolish to try to set it nationwide. One of the things I think we have to look at if we're going to maintain a democracy is a well-regulated capitalism works best. We've seen socialism and communism fail, and that there are some developed countries that have capitalism and have a government that works very well. And the reason is regulations and people that follow them.
Well, that was the one thing when Michael, the previous speaker, was listing the things that harm from Reagan, the one thing that popped in mind that he didn't include was the tax on the regulations, right? And across the board, but obviously environmental regulations, he cited that, but then the financial deregulation, really played into the development of the way the economy went from there to absolutely prioritize the interests of the investor class, who did not, in spite of Republican and right-wing Democratic propaganda, lead to investment in capital, capitalist enterprises in America. It became, chasing speculative wins on the stock market, and everybody knows that, and the casino Wall Street, et cetera, and then the development of an international global economic system which chased after the lowest wage labor everywhere and the lowest regulation everywhere. And so we got to change the trade policy. We got to bring back financial industry regulation. But Robert, and I forgot the question I was going to throw back to you. Then keep going, Robert.
One of the comments on in dealing with global warming, I think it's a practical matter to appeal to the most people. We got to concentrate on air pollution, that because it's costing close to $2,500 per person in the United States because we burn fossil fuels. And if we just assign that cost to the fossil fuels, we wouldn't need any regulations or subsidies. Renewable power would be so much cheaper for people that it would burning of fossil fuels would disappear within 5 or 10 years.
By the way, you did say one thing I disagreed with. I remember I was going to say the national minimum wage. We would need that certainly out of political expediency, because right now the poorest states in the country and some of the poorest regions have very reactionary state governments, and they would never pass meaningful minimum wage at all. So to protect the people in Mississippi, you would need still a federal minimum wage that, again, as we're seeing now in states like California and states across the country, the states then can make the minimum wage commensurate where their economies are. Yeah,
a national law could just stipulate that it be based on a state average.
Yeah, I hear you on that. That's that if it can really be handled. Well, one of the things, we should go on next person. One of the things you bring up, of course, that I'm not a fan of turning anything over more and more to just letting AI determine all these things. But it's been a long time since computers could clearly do the arithmetic in the microsecond to determine what those levels of payment should be in the various regions across the United States of America. And there's no reason that can't be as, quite focused as to what those levels should be. And I'm sure you agree with that. So, but clearly there's these forces in our society that would lobby against such logic. Actually, not Ross Perot. Remember, Perot was always an advocate for that kind of technological set of adjustments to exploit how computers can make things work better like that. But yeah, it's part of the game to reject any such reorganization of wage level payments because it just would empower people, and they don't want that. Okay, thanks. And let's try Demetrius again, and then Eddie, and then Maggie, and then Ralph. Demetrius, how you doing? Please unmute. And oh, you had it. Go ahead. I hit the thing twice. So try it again, Demetrius, and you'll be fine. There you go. Can we hear you? See, yeah, you can get unmuted, but we just can't hear you. So Eddie, I'll ask you to unmute, and then Maggie. Eddie, please unmute.
Hi.
Yeah. Thank you for your patience.
It's okay. The question was, since for the last 6 months, people have been complaining about how badly the Democratic Party lost this year. And then they go ahead and, like you were talking about, overturning wage increases and things. Why are they doing that? That's self-defeating.
Yeah. Well, one of the dynamics there is that if you're somebody who has like a Republican Reaganite ideology and you live in New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, the people on the city councils that vote to do those things are nominally members of the Democratic Party. But since they're one-party cities, and the Democratic machine runs them, the Republicans don't even practically engage in those city politics. You have people who are really Democrats in name only, almost. So that's a subset of them. And then the other ones who maybe are, socially progressive, but they get drawn in by business, and the business leverages them and say, we're going to leave if you do this. And that's never going to happen in New York City because it's so unique and distinctive. But they buy the logic of it, and they have these horrible reactionary votes. So we just got to remake the Democratic Party. But I do think that when you hear about that happening in big cities, people who don't live in big cities, you have to recognize that there are Democrats whose political careers are very, very much tied to the corporate money in the city. They would be Republicans if they weren't in these cities, but sort of to complete, like look at Eric Adams, to compete politically, you have to be a Democrat. Very much a Republican out here named Caruso. And this doesn't even, in New York City, you do have party, for the local elections, you're a party member on the ballot. In California and Los Angeles, in the city of Los Angeles, party names do not appear next to the citywide elections. And yet Caruso, who was a lifelong Republican, had to declare he was a Democrat, change his party affiliation, because he just knew that if he was known as a Republican as a candidate, he couldn't compete here. So literal Republicans become Democrats when they run in these big cities. And it's a product of just the domination of the cities by one party. But thanks, Eddie. And
thank you.
Take care. Maggie, you're up.
Unmute. Hi, I just wanted to know, and this is completely irrelevant. Am I allowed to ask an irrelevant question?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my irrelevant question is, there is rumor all around the Facebook, which I don't go on, but I hear about this, that there's supposed to be a general strike on August 9th. Now, I know you have never even mentioned it.
No, I was going to call. You're right. I haven't. The reason I haven't mentioned it is that general strikes are very hard to organize. And if you call for a general strike, and you have what could even be a nice sizable crowd for what would be a demonstration against on a different subject, is transparently, obviously not a general strike. A general strike is where all the workers are organized to not go to work that day. They do it in France, which has, of course, a much stronger union structure. Complicated to analyze the French union structure right now, but people probably know that time and again, they've tried to limit state spending, or they've successfully now raised the age of retirement or changed national pension structures. And the unions call a general strike and the society shuts down. And so they're very hard to organize. I'm aware of August 9th. I'm not going to discourage people from participating.
I don't understand the strike, though. That's my point. I don't really have any information, and it's on a Saturday.
Yeah, I know. There you go. And
well, that's what I mean. That's I want to understand, what is the plan, or is there a real plan?
No, so
I
this
mean,
apparently a group that was able to get some amount of traction called for it, because nobody is in this sense. If that aspect of it, I'm guessing the people who call for it don't really know international labor history or American union history. There is a very hardcore law against a general strike in the United States called the Taft-Hartley Act, which exists in France, and that would be if unions. Now, look, people may not know this. I think this is public information. Many American major unions, don't know if this is entirely by coincidence, have contracts terming out, and Dan or Mike, if you know about this, Mike or whoever, that term out in 2028. And so there's sort of a hush-hush dialogue going on. That was even before the election, about possibly a whole set of coordinated strikes before the 2028 election. I mean, right now.
Yeah, May Day 2028, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
And so, given Taft-Hartley and everything, that's unions calling for this. I would look at general strike in theory. Yes, it's probably what's needed right now. I mean, you look. Obviously,
yeah, but will there be support for that? That's the question.
No, there won't be.
But see, then it's bound to be a failure, and that would be a setback. That's really bad. So somebody needs to discourage them.
No, I don't think that's a good look. I think I would say, Mike and everybody, Dan, Mike, everybody chime in. The way I look at this kind of thing is it's not even going to be high enough profile to be a setback. So I think the lesson that has to happen. Look, if we have a week as crazy as this past week, if Trump continues to try to deflect from the attention on Epstein by every day coming up with a new idea, like arrest Barack Obama, change the name of some sports teams. Obviously, the second one's relatively insignificant. Reshift nuclear submarines towards Russia. Fire the person in the Labor Department, but it could get more and more outrageous. And who knows where we'll be because of this? Because I think this guy is, he's an absolutely almost psychopathic narcissist, and he is feeling cornered. I mean, I think we're witnessing they may pull him away for 3 days and get him to get some rest or something and calm down, but he's looking like a Shakespearean tragic figure at this point, and he could really spin out of control. Think King Lear.
Yeah, but the problem is it's the democracy. I mean, he is going to go further and further. He is. Let's face it. But my question is, I'm all for the general strike if it's the right thing to do, but I don't see what it's going to be on a Saturday. And I don't see that the center of this, the epicenter is Facebook. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I know. But here's the thing. Okay, I mean, if by like Wednesday or Thursday of this week, because Trump is spinning out crazily, it may get traction. But if it gets that kind of traction, like a moderate level of traction, let's say it's the No King's Day was massive. Let's say it's 1/5 of that or something. Then we say, okay, this is a great idea, general strike. Then we go to the institutions and we think about and strategize about how to really pull off a general strike, because there's an appetite for it. If it fails completely and it just has very few people in very few cities coming out, fail relative to the coalition demonstrations that have happened over the past few months, then I think we just have to really let people know that what you're saying exactly, Maggie, the general strike, it's just not something you declare in an ad hoc way. You need to coordinate among institutions and build towards it and make sure it's nonviolent. And we shut down the economy for the country for a day. And that would really send a message.
Thank you. Alan, to effectively shut down the country, you have to have the participation of the major unions. I know what Mike Ollis mentioned is that Sean Fain of the auto workers is actually planning and working on with other unions to do something on May Day 2028. So we'll see. But that's what 3 years plus
We can't wait that long.
of organizing. Yes. Yeah.
We can't wait that long. We just can't.
Well,
we won't even have an election in 2028 if we
That's
don't do something drastic before that. I mean,
I
let's be real.
understand. I understand. Things change quickly. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, the level of crisis we're in is so profound. And I think people have to realize, and this goes to what I think Maggie's implying. I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Maggie. We can't forget that this is a guy who mobilized people to attack the U.S. Capitol on January 6th.
Yes,
he is hell bent on not getting a negative election result on 2026. Right now, especially after this past week, where finally his poll numbers started to really go down precipitously, he would lose that election. He might pull it off with the gerrymandering. And we're talking about the House in specific. The House race is so important. It's a national election. All 435 seats are up. That's not like the Senate that only ever has a third of it up. So it is a national referendum on the administration and Mike Johnson's leadership. And we have to win that. And it's going badly enough for him right now. I mean, the amount of disruption in the economy he's pulling off. I hate to tell you folks, but LA is like becoming like economic ghost town. Did people see the reports on Las Vegas this past week? He fired the person in the labor department. These numbers are going to get worse. And
so we won't know about it because he'll put someone in who'll lie.
Right.
And that's what he's going to do. That's what I mean. The whole thing is going to go to hell. And I feel like the people are lacking direction. I really do.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't disagree with you, but this is what we have to figure out is how do we coordinate and communicate among, and look, this is my job. And I hear you, Maggie. I mean, and it's
I'm not criticizing you.
No,
not at all.
No, but I mean, look, I'm honored to be obviously in the role that Tim and Donna and Andrea and Connor were previously, but it's a powerful organization because we are coordinated with all the other progressive organizations around the country. So we have to try to pull together and generate a strategy and a coherent strategy to address the unfolding extreme crisis in the country. And there's a whole bunch of things we simply don't have almost any control over. In particular,
are you going to have any of the candidates from the South that are running as are there any candidates running like in Louisiana? There's Joe Kennedy III has a group called, I think, Groundwork Project, and I'm not espousing Joe Kennedy, I'm just saying what he's doing. He's got a group that is in 5 states: Oklahoma, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, and West Virginia, I believe. And he is running around the rural areas of those states. And apparently some of those people down there run unopposed. We don't even have candidates for them.
Yeah, I mean, that does happen. It's the state parties and the local activists who determine that. There, of course, have been many seats where Republicans don't run again back in urban core cities. That tends to be. But yeah, I mean, obviously this is huge, but the coordination is so difficult. And right now we're just at a point where, I mean, obviously part of the strategy, if you can call it, it is a strategy because it comes out of the Heritage Foundation and the people who are really giving the backup to the Trump administration. It's not the.
Why don't we have a Heritage Foundation? Okay. I don't mean, you know what I mean.
No, one of the things is Maggie, and this is a very, very important message for people to understand. They pay top dollar. They are very disciplined and authoritarian in their internal operations. So they pay top dollar. If you do not hit your marks and achieve what you're supposed to achieve on whatever front you're supposed to achieve, you're out the door and they get a new person in. And so the coordination, I think the strategy that the people who were planning for Trump 2.0, obviously they had this idea of a flood the field chaos strategy for the first 6 months or whatever it's been, 6-7 months, and maybe for the whole time. But people are dizzy from that. I mean, there are so many of our allied organizations that have been hurt, the unions, the federal workforce unions, so much of the federal government, and then the spillover of impacting institutions and progressive organizations around the country that need to do more and don't know how the next few months look for them. So yes, it's going to take coordination, and I think
who's in charge?
yeah.
We need to get this wrapped.
Yeah, but it's funny to end on that question and then wrap. Then no one's in charge.
But that's the problem. We don't have a heritage and foundation.
No, I disagree with that entirely. I think first of all, we're probably a little blessed that we have 5 to 7 high-profile progressive organizations. I quipped on a call with leadership from Working Families Party, Justice Democrats, Our Revolution, of course, it was DSA, but I'm forgetting 1 or 2. And that it's sort of, it would be great maybe if it was all coordinated into one organization, but at the same time, in this environment, if they knock out one of us, because they'll start trying to do that, there'll be other ones that are still standing. You can pick up the work, and we have to be able to coordinate, because we do not want an authoritarian top-down leadership organization or movement, or of course not a society either. So I think we just need to be disciplined in our coordination with each other. And I think we have a pretty clear way forward, but with all the chaos that it's creating, when you talk about a general strike, I think that's something that people are now thinking about. And a lot of people are thinking about, but there's almost no infrastructural planning or organization, let alone planning for that yet. And I agree, we have to do something to stop this if it goes much further. It's very frightening. I don't want to frighten people. We've never had this kind.
It is scary, but that's the thing. We have to understand the seriousness of this. We really do.
Right. I mean, the outlays for ICE are intense, and we've never had a national Praetorian Guard. People call the CIA that in the Cold War period, but this is for domestic enforcement at the federal level. Yeah, that's part of the landscape. It's terrifying. Okay, look, we got to wrap here, folks. Having said all that, the population's turning against Trump. That's a good thing. Saru Jayaraman is a great ally, and One Fair Wage is a great organization to ally with. I want to thank Mike Olis. I want to thank everyone. Thank you, Maggie. Great conversation, but it's a little late in the game, so we got to wrap here. And I want to thank Dan O'Neill. And then we got this great call tomorrow at Monday around getting money out of politics in the Democratic primaries. That's going to be a great call. I hope many of you can join us. And let's wrap, and we'll be back again. Progressive Democrats of America National Town Hall next week, same time, same place. See you then.